The following account is as real and as disturbing as it gets. For this we go out of the area of East and North Yorkshire, out of the area of the United Kingdom, all the way to New Zealand. It happened on the 14th of February 2015 at around 5 a.m. in the morning. It happened in Rongoti, near Palmerston North in New Zealand. The following are recollections from the witness in his own words, based on the notes he took at the time. It was a very personal and disturbing experience that I had in 2015. As mentioned, I have not discussed this with anyone at all, as I have tried to rationalise and explain away the experience without success. As is usual with these types of events, I was still and I still am concerned about the ridicule factor and the "it's all made up and there's no evidence" reaction that you get when speaking about such things. Yet here I am, years later, still pondering over it. The only person I did reach out to about how I was feeling about this incident was a British UFO researcher now based in Australia, as this lady does counselling and investigates analysis for alien contact. I thought she may have been able to touch on and discuss this event. But alas, it was a while back, and when I contacted her, she was in Australia, so nothing came of it. I didn't go into any detail with her anyway, rather just ask about the avenues and forums where I could discuss such experiences. A few things of interest before discussing the incident. Firstly, this happened approximately 1 week after I had unwittingly taken a photograph of an object in the sky. An object that still remains unidentified. I have no idea if this second incident is related to that one, but in my mind they are connected and remain so. This may not be strictly rational, but I have a strong sense there was some connection, as the timing of the two events was so close and the experiences were inextricably connected in my mind. Secondly, the geographic location of where I am living when this event occurred is of interest due to its closeness to two military facilities. One of only 3 key RNZAF air bases in New Zealand is only about 10 minutes drive away from me. The second is a top secret spy base, which according to Wikipedia forms part of the Echelon 5 Eyes spy network, and that is only a 10-minute drive away. There are numerous underground levels to this live facility, and all the usual protocols of classified site apply to it. Personnel from this facility are known in the local area as secret squirrels. I've personally met at least 2 people that have worked there in various capacities. The event happened in the early hours of the morning, I'm guessing between 4:30 and 5 a.m, whilst I was in bed at home alone. I had been sleeping soundly until I woke up suddenly and was immediately aware of something either in the room or in the house. Or that's the way it felt. Rather like if you get awakened by a loud sound but can't place it, but you know it means something has happened. I think we all know the feeling. After sitting awake for a minute or so, I decided to get up and have a look downstairs, just to satisfy my mind that I'd heard something. But upon checking, all was fine. I quickly used the bathroom and then made my way back upstairs. The bedroom was still dark and was otherwise just as I'd left it a few minutes earlier. I got back in bed and pulled the duvet up around me, then rolled over from my right-hand side to my left. This is a double bed and I was sleeping alone. As I rolled over, I was totally and utterly astounded to see something laying in the bed next to me. His face was looking straight at me and I was totally frozen in shock. Absolute terror. The best I can do to describe the features on this thing were it was a cross between a gargoyle and a reptile creature of some sort. It was a darkish green in colouring and easily the same size as me. I'm well over average height at 6'6". Its features were somewhat crinkled or lined, but its eyes were the most disturbing. They were black, shiny and full of malevolent intent. I simply could not detect any emotion or empathy emitting from this thing. And there it was lying there staring at me. My reaction seemed to slow down dramatically and I began to scream out loud, but no words came out of my mouth. As I opened my mouth, this thing opened its mouth in response. Its jaws and mouth were huge, and it was almost as though its lower jaw extended somewhat and exposed a multitude of rows and rows of teeth. My own scream was caught in my mouth, and then it lunged forwards as if to bite my face. As it did so, I went out like a light. From the time I laid down and turned over in bed to going out like a light, it had perhaps only taken 5 to 7 seconds at the most, or that was how I perceived it. My overriding feeling at the time, and to a diminishing extent now, is that this thing was actually trying to somehow get inside of me or become a part of me. This is so difficult to verbalize. I'm not eloquent enough to be able to explain this aspect of the event in any way, no matter how I think about it. But in simple terms, it felt as though an exchange of sorts, perhaps an energetic or psychic swap, was occurring, although there were no physical markings discernible left behind. I woke about 2 hours later, and as soon as I opened my eyes, I sprang out of bed, fully expecting this thing to still be there. It was the first and only thing on my mind. I flung the duvet across the room and opened the curtains to let in the sunlight. It flooded the room. There was no trace of this thing whatsoever. Unusually, in my mind was the image of a spider which had been crawling over me while I slept. I don't know why. Being such an unusual incident, I immediately started to rationalize what had happened and put it down to being a dream. Perhaps a waking dream, perhaps some kind of sleep paralysis or similar. But it was such a strong experience and so incredibly real to me. I remain convinced that it happened. I would not discuss this experience with anyone for a long time. Unlike any strange dreams that I have had, which I usually willingly share, this has remained a deeply private experience for me for many, many years. After reading your work, Paul, I've realized that there is an exorcism of sorts in sharing these type of experiences. And being judged by others is something I care less and less about as I get older. What is amazing is the cathartic nature of writing these words down for the first time. Within a few weeks of this happening, I made the decision to leave the place where I was living and return to England. This event was the catalyst of making that happen. I was never entirely comfortable sleeping in that room or that bed ever again. Yet here I am back in New Zealand again. Here I am back in the same house, in the same room, in the same bed. Why I made the decision to come back here has not been entirely explicable to me. But there is, I sense, something quite important about this locality and its proximity to military facilities. The term I used of an exorcism is one I chose carefully. The tangible way in which this thing presented itself had me convinced that it had not left the room at all, but that I had somehow incorporated it. Perhaps it was already a part of me and was ready to show itself. I have no idea. This was my experience, and it seems very odd indeed. But after reading this back myself, if presented with a similar story, I would be immediately looking for the most obvious answer. The principle of Occam's razor, the most likely explanation, etc. But when these things have happened to you, as you well know, dismissing them is not really an option, and nor necessarily is discussing them openly. We end up in a kind of no man's land of denial, unsatisfactory self-explanation, or simply burying the truth as it's too difficult to confront. And so here we are. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed my story.